Hello, hello. Oh, I have a little bit of a sneak peek there. Hello, my name is Ben Friedman here from the Beniverse. You know what? There was a lot of exciting news in regards to the DC universe. James Gunn is taking it over along with Peter Safran. I just decided I let's just go for it live. Let's just see what happens live. I have been at work all day. I really haven't gotten to break down to read any of the news in regards to the DC universe. I'm very excited. I'm a big fan of James Gunn. So I just decided let's watch this video together. Let's talk about it. If anyone ever has comments or questions about it, throw it in the chat. I'll read it. If no one's live, who the hell cares? I'll have fun with it. No, regardless. So let's just give some breakdown about this. DC has been in kind of a weird flux since basically Batman versus Superman. They come in 2013, they have this idea with Man of Steel. Man of Steel doesn't do so well. It's not that it doesn't do great. Actually, it's a fairly good financial hit. It's a little bit mixed response to say the least. The film is met with criticism. It then goes on. Batman versus Superman comes in, and that begins where the question of what the DC future is going to hold. This Snyderverse all kind of comes around. Then there's, of course, the infamous at this point Josh Whedon cut of Justice League. How much of a disaster that is for the studio. Then leading into the Snyderverse, leading into the Snyder cut of Justice League, the fanboys, all of that. Plus, they've had some questionable movies with Wonder Woman 1984 in there, which has had a very mixed to negative response from fans. There's just been a lot, of course. And then the cap is David Zaslav, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He becomes head of DC. He's this Warner Media guy. I believe he really tries spearheading. What was it? It was like, I don't think it was CNN Plus, but it was one of these like streaming services that didn't do well. I think it was Discovery. It's Discovery. Then Warner Brothers becomes Discovery. There's this whole HBO Max controversy. Batgirl gets shelved. That movie will never see the light of day. There's just so much going on with it. And it just leads to this basically this moment in DC where everything feels muddled. No one's exactly sure what's going to happen. Of course, there's the Aquaman controversy, which I'm not going to get into. There's the Flash controversy with Ezra Miller, which they have had a lot of issues this past year, calendar year. And it's all kind of came to light. And it's like, will the Flash ever see? Of course, then there's this Batgirl thing. Then you hear troubles on the set of Wonder Woman 3 and Patty Jenkins. You have all these things kind of just coming together. Then you have the Rock controversy with Black Adam, the film tanks. He brings back Henry Cavill. It's just this huge, huge mess for DC. Meanwhile, of course, Marvel's doing their thing. They continue to be successful. Other places are finding success within the superhero uh, world of films. And DC, it's not that they don't have success. They have probably the most successful superhero movie of last year with the Batman, but it's nothing seems coherent within the DC universe. There doesn't seem to be any plan. There isn't any direction until I believe it's about October when James Gunn, Peter Safran take over. They are announced as the creative heads of DC. That raises a very interesting question because they're the creative heads, but James Gunn is a director who works with Marvel. How are other directors going to get along with James Gunn basically giving them notes as the studio head? Is that going to conflict of interest? You know, Kevin Feige, while he's very involved in the MCU, it's not like Kevin Feige's directing movies. He can certainly, and don't get me wrong, he certainly has a lot of input on those movies, but ultimately he is not the director of these movies. James Gunn is going to be the writer for, it sounds like, a handful of these, and based on the Suicide Squad, based on Peacemaker, based on the fact that that seems to be continuing on, you can probably be safe to believe that James Gunn is going to be involved in not only writing, I wouldn't be shocked to see him as a director. So, how is that all going to work out? That's going to be kind of the interesting question moving forward. But it also led to this discussion of DC. What's going to happen next? What is canon? What is not? Is Gal Gadot getting recast? Is Jason Momoa becoming Lobo? Is is the Snyderverse essentially dead? If what's going on with Henry Cavill? There's a statement a few weeks ago, Henry Cavill's not returning as Superman. Who's our new Superman? What's happening with it? Pattinson's universe with Matt Reeves. What is going on? James Gunn said, "Don't worry, I'm going to take to online and basically have a public forum that kind of just lays out the next like 5 to 10 years of DC, our phase one, if you will, as they call it. James Gunn calls it Gods and Monsters. He released about a 6 minute video that we're going to watch. He released it on Twitter. So you can find this on James Gunn's Twitter. And we're going to watch this. So, again, I haven't heard it in much detail, but we're just going to start it and we're going to see what James Gunn has to say about the whole DC universe.
Hey, everybody, I'm James Gunn. I'm the co-CEO of DC Studios. So as many of you know, DC has been disconnected in film and television for a long time. And it's one of our jobs, mine and Peter's, is to come in and make sure the DCU is connected in film, television, gaming, and animation. That the characters are consistent.
Let's pause real quick, just right there. That's something I find very interesting. It's not just the movies and it's not just the TV shows. They're talking video games. I mean, they are truly doing the full Star Wars way of it. The idea that Jedi Fallen Order, Battlefront 2, they connect to the Star Wars universe. These stories are all brought together. That gets really convoluted quick. Even Marvel has not taken that step yet. They have not quite risked the idea of like, oh, we have video games, we have comics that are really tied in. Like, yes, there are comics that are tied in, but they're not really of any essential note. So I'm curious to see. I mean, James Gunn, avid comic book reader, curious to see what he has planned for that.
Played by the same actors, and it works within one story. And if something is outside of that, like Matt Reeves' Batman or Todd Phillips' Joker or Teen Titans Go, that it is clearly labeled as DC Elseworlds, outside of the mainstream DCU continuity. Now, Peter and I have gotten pretty lucky in terms of the
I should note, I did see the list of what DC is going to be focusing on. And I did obviously see Teen Titans Go, Joker, Joker 2 are on there, Batman Part 2. I'm curious if it's a comprehensive list. I don't think it is because I know they have Superman and Lois, but like, does that mean Harley Quinn is canceled now? I'm sure the more details will come out about that. They didn't mention Harley Quinn. I know that for a fact in this video, but we'll see. I mean, James Gunn made a literal cameo in Harley Quinn, so I have a feeling he at least enjoys the show.
4 projects that are coming out over the next year. First, we have Shazam, Fury of the Gods. Shazam has always been off kind of in his own part of the DCU, so he connects very well.
Excited about
that moves directly into The Flash, a fantastic movie that I really love that resets the entire DC universe. Then to move into Blue Beetle, a fantastic film about...
Okay, so I do want to address this real quick because he mentioned the fact of The Flash being just seen as this great film, truly like a wonder for DC. I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to even say anything related to sources that I've heard it from. I have heard from people who are connected with this, with DC. This movie is really good, and that's why they didn't want to shelve it. Because of the Ezra Miller controversy. I don't think I'm saying too much about that. I know other people like John Campea, I believe Harloff's mentioned it. I believe Jeff Snyder at the Ankler. There's been a handful of reports. I know Hollywood Reporter, I believe, has brought it down. I think Matt Bellany over at Puck News, I think he had a whole spiel about this. I'm not going to even like fully trust my source. But based on what I've heard, this isn't the first time where I've heard The Flash is something very excited that people are legitimately excited for. And I'll just tell you, this is a source that I trust enough to the belief that they don't really BS me. They're not like someone who will just lie and tell me something. They will genuinely be like, no, this is what I am hearing. This is what I have heard. This is people who are talking about it. They're very excited about this. And we as a team are very excited about that. That's all I'll say on The Flash for now.
a kid who's a marvelous part of the DCU, and then into Aquaman 2, which leads directly into our next few projects, which I'm going to tell you about now.
Okay, I'm going to pause again just real quick. Aquaman 2 is another one. I've heard this one's been kind of through development hell. Now, that's not from like a source or anything. That is just what I've heard based on other people's reportings of it, that Aquaman 2 hasn't been necessarily the easiest of productions, largely because one, it had the COVID effect, which is always just a trouble with that itself. So they are making it clear at this moment these films are still somehow tied to the DC. It sounds like they can move forward going on. Uh, that's interesting. We'll see how long that sticks and what is and isn't true. I am inclined to believe that James Gunn wants to use some of these more popular characters, or sorry, popular actors to do it. I have a feeling there are aspects of these old the Snyder universe, if you will, that are just going to be completely stripped. For instance, anything related to Superman is gone. Superman, Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, Amy Adams, Black Adam for that matter, now that he tied himself so directly to Henry Cavill, that's all gone. Shazam, since Shazam and Black Adam haven't meet, it seems reasonable enough that they could connect it. Although Shazam does technically have that Superman, not post credit, but the ending of Shazam does have what is supposed to be Henry Cavill's Superman. So, I'm not saying all these are iffy. And of course, Wonder Woman, like they're in the DC universe. Like they are with Snyder and with Henry Cavill. So we'll see. I am in the belief that some of the newer stuff is going to be easier. Blue Beetle makes sense. He hasn't been introduced. He can kind of fold over into that world. Ezra Miller, if the Flash is the reboot it says it is, then it also makes sense that they could kind of movie magic that. We'll see again what exactly happens from there. But those are my brief thoughts on that. Let's continue with James. Don't want to steal this.
So Peter and I, along with a group of very talented writers, have started to map out an 8 to 10 year plan of what DC Studios will be in film, television, and gaming. This first chapter is called Gods and Monsters. Now, what I'm about to tell you is a part of the first chapter. It's not the entire first chapter. The first project is Creature Commandos.
This looks
Creature
cool.
Commandos is an animated series. I've written all the episodes. Something we're going to do that's a little bit different at DC is we're going to have characters move into animation, out of animation, usually having the same actor play their voice as who plays them in live action.
So let's pause on this because I have a few thoughts on this, because this is one of the projects that I did read about earlier today. This is interesting, this idea that James Gunn says that he wants to bring in the actors who do the voices into the live action, and vice versa. You got to be careful on this, because what if for Marvel taught us that, if you're a good actor on screen does not make you a good voice actor. So I'm curious to see how they pull it off. They got to get some really talented people who can do both, because like someone like Sebastian Stan in What If, great as Winter Soldier live, not the best voice actor. So we'll see how that goes. But I mean, this is a film where a bunch of monsters are going to fight Nazis. I'm sold. That's what A League of Extraordinary Gentlemen should have been. I'm here for Frankenstein's monster ripping off heads.
Next project up is Waller. This is a story of Amanda Waller, played by Viola Davis.
So Viola
Davis is going to team up with members of Team Peacemaker, and this is a story that's been created by Crystal Henry, who did Watchmen, and Jeremy Carver, who created the Doom Patrol. It is a fantastic story that's out of this world, and I can't wait for people to see. Okay, next up is the big one, the true beginning of the DCU. This is called Superman Legacy. This is being written by me. I'm in the middle of it. I'm having a great time doing it. And Superman will be released into theaters July 11th, 2025. Okay, the next thing is
So I think he said July 2025. At this moment, he has not said who the director is. If this is the kickstart of the DC universe, I would kind of be inclined to believe James Gunn is directing this movie. Now, nothing's confirmed. He is writing this movie. at this point, I would assume he is kind of spearheading this, which is interesting because sincerity isn't always James Gunn's strength. I think Guardians has showed that he can do it and he can do it very well, but there is a cynicism to his films that are even present in Guardians that I don't know how it's going to work with Superman. James Gunn's very talented. I'm sure he'll figure it out. But I'm very excited for the Superman project. I really am. I just the idea of Superman being, the hope symbol, like that's who Superman is. Let's get back to the Christopher Reeve of it, even as much as I like Henry Cavill.
Big premiere HBO television series called Lanterns. This is a story of a couple of Green Lanterns, John Stewart and Hal Jordan, and we have a few other lanterns peppered in there, but this is really a terrestrial-based TV show, which is almost like True Detective with a couple of Green Lanterns who are space cops watching over Precinct Earth. In it, they discover a terrifying mystery that ties into our larger story of the DCU.
Okay, let's pause there on the Lantern show. Love the premise, love the idea. Let's get the Green Lanterns in the DC universe. The last time we saw them, really, besides that quick cameo in Zack Snyder's Justice League, was the Ryan Reynolds movie. Let's move forward from that. Let's talk about this. Here's what I do think is funny, and I understand why they do it. He's doing the whole pitch, the idea of like, here's the macro idea. I think it's called the macro. Maybe it's the big idea, but the idea is that basically, here's our log line for this. This is Lanterns. It's True Detective. Think of True Detective, but in space. It's a cheap way to do it to me. It's just, hey, think of this pop culture reference. That's kind of what we're doing. And they never usually end up being exactly like that. It usually feels more like a comic book movie, but it's a good way to do it. It's the same way how David Fincher sold, not David Fincher, how Matt Reeves sold Batman as a David Fincher type noir. But regardless, I'm excited for this. The casting of Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart's going to be really interesting, and I wonder if we'll get that later this year at Comic-Con or if we're going to have to wait maybe a few years. But I'm very excited for this Lanterns project.
Next is a big movie called The Authority. The Authority is a passion project of mine. It's based on the marvelous Wildstorm characters. We are now bringing into the DCU and will interact with all of our primary DCU characters. The Authority are a group of superheroes who think the world is broken and they want to fix it by any means necessary. I think it's a very different look at superheroes. We're doing a television series called Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost is the story of Paradise Island, usually known as Themyscira, which is the birthplace of Wonder Woman. It's almost like Game of Thrones with Westeros, but with all of the inhabitants.
I'll believe it when I see it.
The introduction of the DCU
Game of Thrones gets, but regardless, I'm not a big Themyscira guy. I'll be honest. Those are the two weakest scenes to me in Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman 1984 is when they're on Themyscira for extended amount of times. The best Themyscira use is actually in Zack Snyder's Justice League. I think that scene is incredible, but I can't really get excited when I haven't been excited by Themyscira yet. But regardless, I understand why they're making this. And yes, let's go on.
Use Batman is the brave and the bold. The Brave and the Bold is the story of Batman and his actual son, Damian Wayne. This is based on Grant Morrison's great comic book run. Damian Wayne is my favorite Robin. He's a little assassin who Batman tries to get in line. And so this is the story of the two of them and the beginning of sort of the Bat family in the
Okay, Bat family, good buzzword. I like the Bat family. I like Batman. If you're going to do Batman, introduce Robin, because it doesn't seem like we are going to get that in the Matt Reeves universe, or at least at this moment. I'm not a Damian Wayne fan. I think those comics are really bad. I think there's been a few animated movies that have used Damian Wayne as well, the DC animated films. I'm just not a fan of this character. I think he's far too annoying. I know James Gunn in an interview says the same thing. He calls him a little SOB. That is exactly what Damian is. So I hope he understands that and that they're able to do something interesting with it. I'm not particularly excited for this Batman project, Brave and the Bold, even though it's great title, just simply because I really like the Matt Reeves universe. And if that's my Batman right now, I'm totally fine with my Batman content. But, prove me wrong. We'll see.
DCU. Next up is a TV series called Booster Gold. Booster Gold is one of comics' really popular cult heroes. He is a fascinating guy. He's a loser from the future who uses future technology to come back to present day and become a superhero so that people will love him. It is basically the superhero story of imposter syndrome on an HBO Max series. One of my favorite comic book series from last year was Tom King's run on Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. And so we're going to turn that into a big science fiction epic film. Now, Superman is a guy who was sent to Earth and raised by loving parents, whereas Supergirl in this story, she is a character who was raised on a chunk of Krypton. She watched everybody around her perish in some terrible way. So she's a much more jaded character. And that brings me to Swamp Thing.
Okay, I'm going to pause before we get to Swamp Thing. James Gunn's a very good presenter. He really sold Supergirl. That's an exciting premise. That got me excited for that because it's that idea of like, oh, we have this character and this character are basically in a lot of people's eyes the same, just different sexes. This is like, no, this is how Superman and Supergirl differ. Where he is optimistic, she is jaded. She's seen her whole family die in front of her, where Superman just had his planet blow up, but he left and didn't get to experience it and doesn't remember it. So it's these different viewpoints. It's these oppositions that just come together. And that makes the universe feel bigger when you can have characters with very similar powers, and yet they have such different approaches to life. That's what really expands a universe. Swamp Thing.
We're going to talk about a very dark horror story in the origins of the monster.
James Gunn's a huge horror guy. I'm not surprised.
And although it's totally outside of the rest of the DCU, it will still feed into the rest of the stories.
Would be up James Gunn.
Anyway, those are the stories that I can tell you about right now. I've loved the DC characters since I was a child. They're incredibly important to me. I knew that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something very different. One of the things that's very important for me in all of these movies and TV series is that the director's vision and the vision of the writers and all of the creators is unique and something special. Storytelling is always king. That's all that matters to us. And I want to be true to those stories. I want to be true to you guys and really give you something different than you've ever seen before. Good. Anyway, thank you, everybody.
That's the perfect statement of anything that was said today. That is the statement. I want to stay true to the directors and writers' vision. I want to stay true to these characters. I want to stay true to you guys and your love of these characters. That's exciting. That is genuinely exciting. The idea that he cares so much about this. Listen, having James Gunn as your ambassador, that's a great start. And to be the Kevin Feige of your universe, he can sell something. Now let's see him deliver. I like James Gunn a lot. I think what he's done with the Guardians has really helped expand the expand the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Even if I'm not the biggest fan of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, that helped raise the stakes and really just change the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And of course, Guardians does that so well. It really makes the world feel larger. And if James Gunn can bring that magic to DCU, I'm excited. Anyway, I did want to switch over to this article that was written by the Hollywood Reporter. I just want to make sure you guys can see it. Yeah, you can. So let's talk about this. Hollywood Reporter, DC slate unveiled new Batman, Supergirl movies, a Green Lantern TV show, and more from James Gunn, Peter Safran by Boris Kit. I'm going to skip a lot of this article because a lot of it is just what was just said, but there are some interesting tidbits that haven't been talked about. So Creature Commandos was the name of the show about the anti-heroes. Waller, Superman Legacy. We already got news on all this. Batman Part 2, Supergirl, Swamp Thing. Here we go. So here's some of the interesting names. To come up with an overall direction of the slate, Gunn assembled a group of writers consisting of friends and storytellers that he has admired. Among them were the Martian scribe, Drew Goddard, very popular name, the Flash writer, Christina Hodson, Moon Knight head writer Jeremy Slater, interesting, he's pulling people from Marvel, and Watchmen writer Crystal Henry, and famed comic book scribe Tom King. Good name to have. King is one of the biggest DC writers of the past 12 years, a key architect of its Batman line, and the writer of the Supergirl miniseries that will be the basis of this movie. Good idea to get him on board then. Before audiences get to those films and series, however, there is a matter of this year's crop of movies, starting with Shazam, Fury of the Gods, coming March 17th, and continuing with The Flash, Blue Beetle, and Aquaman. I forgot they had 4 movies this year. That's kind of crazy. Gunn and Safran are high on this quadrant made under the previous film regime and the aegis of DC films run by the former head Walter Hamada. Gunn calls The Flash, directed by Andy Muschietti, probably one of the greatest superhero movies ever made. He also said the 4 leads of these films could potentially return to their roles in DC projects down the line. There is nothing that prohibits them from happening. Ezra might have some words to say about that. There we go. Among those actors is Ezra Miller, the troubled star of The Flash, who has found themselves at the center of several criminal investigations and who in August announced they were seeking treatment for complex mental health issues. That's going to be rough to for people to not bring that into the movie theater with them while seeing Flash. Safran said the executives remain hopeful of Miller is on a path to betterment. Ezra is completely committed to their recovery. We are fully supportive of that journey that they are on right now. When the time is right, when they are ready to have that discussion, we will all figure out what is the best path forward. But right now, they are completely focused on their recovery. And in our conversation with them in the last couple of months, it feels like they are making enormous progress. That's a great way to sidestep the issue and just say, right now, we'll see what happens. They're working on it. And if it works, then we'll talk about it later. It's a great way to just kind of not answer a question. Masterclass writing there. The duo also discussed their approach to casting writ large, whether it was returning or new actors. The TV series will look to cast actors who will also play the parts on the big screen. Just as John Cena played the violent figure Peacemaker in Gunn's The Suicide Squad, and then in the Peacemaker series, anyone cast as Hal Jordan and John Stewart in Lanterns, for example, will cross over into the films. That's a big thing because movie stars like being in movies. They'll do the TV, but if they can get the movies, that's what they want. We don't want this series to feel in any way like stepchildren or lesser than, said Gunn. It's just another way to tell a story. And then they talked about the touchy subject of Henry Cavill, tipped to return as Superman in a cameo in last year's Black Adam, but who in the end will not return as Superman, much to the chagrin of a vocal fan base. We didn't fire Henry. Henry was never cast, said Gunn. For me, it's about who do I want to cast as Superman and who do the filmmakers we have want to cast. And for me, for this story, it isn't Henry. They're going with a younger Henry Cavill, and again, they want to disconnect from the Snyderverse. There's just too much toxicity. There's too much online discussion. You got to burn it all down and let it move forward, even though that's going to hurt some fans and people like me who really did actually want to see the DC universe expanded like that. He added, I like Henry. I think he's a great guy. I think he's getting dicked around by a lot of people, including the former regime at this company. But this Superman is not Henry for a number of reasons. I think we're going to see a younger Superman is my prediction for one of those reasons, along with everything that I just said. The executives also tried to walk the line of how to deal with actors who step into controversy, with Shazam Zachary Levi being the most recent example. Over the weekend, Levi tweeted words about pharmaceutical giant Pfizer, known for its COVID-19 vaccine, which many interpreted as the actor having anti-vaccine views. Let's take a pause on this. I don't particularly want to jump into what Zachary Levi said. I think it's foot and mouth syndrome. I think I don't know if he's actually denouncing COVID-19 vaccinations. He could. I've never particularly gotten that impression from it. In fact, I feel like I remember him being in like a PSA or showing a video of him getting the shot. I could be wrong on that, but I thought I did see that. Scott Mendelson tweeted like how he remembers that when famous people used to go at pharmaceutical companies, that was like Michael Moore and I believe it's Roger and Me, and that was the example. Like, okay, well, let's give Zachary Levi the benefit of the doubt. I don't want to get into it much further than that. I think it is people online making more of a big deal than something is. If he is so outspoken about vaccines, you know what? There's a lot of celebrities who have Evangeline Lilly is about to be in Ant-Man and the Wasp, and boy, has she been outspoken about it. For some people, that's going to just they're going to disconnect from that. They're going to be annoyed and you'll never win them back. For others, it's just kind of not a big deal. And in general, anyone who thinks that's going to sink the movie, it's not. It's a vocal fan base on Twitter who who was going to get mad at this. The general public is not, that's not going to affect Shazam's box office. That's all I'll say about that. Even though I just straight up I disagree. If Zachary Levi is basically saying COVID-19 vaccines, are poisonous, there's not enough research, blah blah blah, they're so dangerous, we shouldn't be trusting uh medication, the doctors, blah blah blah. I that's that's his right to say that. I think it's a dumb opinion. That's all I'll say about it. What Gunn said about it, though, actors, filmmakers that I work with are going to say things that I agree with and things that I don't agree with, said Gunn, who in 2018 was temporarily fired by Disney as director of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 due to old offensive tweets. Don't know why they added that sentence. I don't think it's relevant to anything. I can't be changing my plans all the time because an actor says something that I don't agree with. At the same token, if something is doing something that is morally reprehensible, that's a different story, and we have to take that into account. Again, great way to kind of sidestep that. I think he really is just sidestepping a story that one doesn't really matter in the long time. And just, you know what? He probably at the very least knows Zachary Levi and just, Zachary Levi just posted about how he lost his dad. I'm sure James Gunn just didn't want to pile on to anything that was being said or anything like that. So I think he just kind of sidestepped the whole issue. And again, it's a non-issue. Though Gunn and Safran are working in one DC universe, some stories will stand apart. Reeves' Batman movie and Todd Phillips' sequel to Joker will fall under a banner titled DC Elseworlds, which will also, just as in the comics, fall outside the larger continuity of the DCU. The Black Superman project, being written by Ta-Nehisi Coates under the previous regime, remains in active development. Good. I'm very excited about that. And would also fall under that category. Teen Titans Go, the popular and long-running cartoon series on Cartoon Network, also falls under that banner. The duo said, still no news on Harley Quinn. Getting a little worried about that. The bar is going to be very high for projects to be outside the DCU, the elsewhere projects, explained Safran. But every now and then, there will be something that lives up to that. And then let's get to this point about superhero fatigue, an idea that I've been talking about a lot in 2022 and probably leading into 2023. Gunn and Safran also stressed the importance of strong screenplay, saying a focus that would prevent the dreaded feeling of superhero fatigue and also give the project a tonal and thematic difference from each other. Gunn called out the degradation of screenwriters in Hollywood. That is the really big thing. Gunn is a screenwriter. He knows how difficult it is in Hollywood right now. He knows how the landscape has changed. He feels it probably just as much as any other screenwriter. Gunn called out the degradation, etc., in Hollywood, and also said that the duo wanted to be respectful of the voice of filmmakers that we're working with up to a point. It's not the Gunverse, it's not. Gunn said it's going to be all the different feels from all these different stories. That's what makes it so fun. The stories are completely different, and each of them has an individual expression of the writers and the director that are making those projects. Please let that be true. Please let that be true. Please let that be true. I just want to see tonal variety in my superhero movies. As much as I love Marvel, there hasn't been a ton recently. But he added, we're not stupid. Not every filmmaker is going to be happy because if something is doing something that isn't working, we're going to be honest. Totally fair statement. Let's see how much more of this I need to read. I'll read this part because this talks about Zaslav. Gunn and Safran's hiring were the accumulation of over half year's quest by Warner Bros. Discovery CEO David Zaslav to find someone to lead a screen division of DC. In his own words, Zaslav was looking for a Kevin Feige, the storied and successful head of rival Marvel Studios. Isn't every studio looking for a Kevin Feige, for being real, et cetera, et cetera? Feige, who hired him to direct 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy, but he was quick to note this is not a Marvel Redux. A lot of people are thinking this is Marvel 2.0. It's not. Zaslav has a vision in mind and a standalone studio that would have everything DC centralized, said Safran. And that was the appeal for us. Coming in, having access to any characters, any story, and to tell the stories we wanted to tell across all mediums. God, I hate when my computer starts having Wi-Fi issues. I'm back. There I am. There I am. I am here again. Sorry about that, guys. No one was minding the mint, says Gunn. They were always giving away IP like they were party favors at any creator who smiled at them. It's a good quote. Let's see if there's anything else that I want to talk about. It's been a lifelong dream, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we're going to close this out. And I'm going to finish this video just by myself. Anyway, that is the future of DC Universe. Sorry for that disconnection briefly right there. I'm excited for this. Let's see what they have in mind. I'm ready for this. I really want DC to be just great. Truly, truly. The Justice League show of the early 2000s, Batman with Kevin Conroy, that's my DCU. That's what I've grown up with. I think James Gunn can do it. I'm optimistic. Let's see what he has. Anyway, all, thank you for watching this live video. I got to fix the Wi-Fi for next time. I got to just not be on Wi-Fi. I'm going to be on Ethernet. But thank you all for listening. My name is Ben Friedman here from the Beniverse. I'll have more reviews. I just got back from Sundance Virtual, so I have a lot of reviews coming and a lot more to talk about. I'm doing an M. Night ranking later this week. So thank you all for watching. Take care and bye-bye.